I think these bug eyes are creepy. I think they're a little spooky for my chicken. Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be walking you through my experience making, can you guess, the emotional support chicken. So I thought this mural would be the perfect place to introduce the video. Stick around if you are currently working on the project, if it's something you're interested in making, or if you've never heard of the emotional support chicken. Let's get into it. At this point in our chicken journey, it has turned to true spring in Cleveland, and I am now melting in my craft room on the second floor of my unair-conditioned house. So pardon the melting, pardon any shifts you're noticing in this portion of the video, because now spring has sprung. And I've wondered, what will I do once it's spring and summer and my house is 80, 85 degrees, upstairs at least? And I'm not sure. So my videos that I film throughout the spring and summer may look quite different. I may start filming in other places. I may start sharing different types of content to cater towards spring and summer because we're knitting different things. Maybe people take a break. I used to take breaks from my knitting in the summer. Now I've shifted to knitting almost every day, or every day if I can. So just wanted to share that. And I think the melting, I think the heat in this house matches the feeling that I have as I attempt to seam and finish my emotional support chicken. So in front of me, I've got 2 pairs of pliers and an emotional support chicken. And you can guess what's going to happen with that. Maybe you can't guess, but give it a whirl. So if you've met me, if you've been here on the channel, I often talk about my haphazard way of pushing through with projects and then later having some sort of regret that I want to shift or try to adjust regarding a project. So we've hit that mark with the chicken. I made this chicken out of fingering weight yarn. I think he is super, or she really is super cute. I like the colors. I used all sock yarns, all scraps. They are stashables from my local yarn shop, Around the Table Yarns and Shaker. If you watched my interview with the 2 owners, Beth and Pam, you saw at the end of the video they're stashables, which are little, I think 20-gram bundles of sock yarn, hand-dyed fingering weight sock yarns that they have created. They've created mini skeins from an enormous stash of beautiful sock yarns they've both collected through the years. So I went in and picked a few colors. I've technically got 1, 2, 3, 4 different colors, and then the 5th for the small detail there. And somewhere on my desk, I have the little detail that I need to sew on once I've seamed the chicken. So I think he's cute. The pattern calls for worsted weight yarn. I want to do a worsted weight chicken out of wool stock. I have a lot of wool stock scraps behind me in one of my jars or vases, but I wanted to do a small chicken first to test it. So I just went down to a much smaller needle and made sure that my gauge was tight enough so that when we stuff it today, I'm not going to lose stuffing between the stitches. So here's the haphazard part. In a rush last week, I went ahead and put on some fairly large safety eyes that I had at home, and I don't like them. I think they're buggy, they're too big, and then I went to my local shop where they have a really fun selection of safety eyes, and I found, I think, a more appropriate size, and they're also colorful. So it's not just a black safety eye, but it's got a little bit of color. I'll show you here. I don't want to lose the backs of these little pieces. So this is the safety eye I'm going to use instead, which has the pupil and it has the sort of orange, yellow-orange for the color of the eye. And I think that size is going to be a happier fit. I think these bug eyes are creepy. I think they're a little spooky for my chicken. So, did I already push the backs of these safety eyes on? Yes. Can I get them off? I don't know. I've never used safety eyes before, so I'm going to try. I have 2 sets of pliers. Please don't do this at home unless you know what you're doing. I don't want you to hurt yourself, and I hope that I don't get hurt as I try this. And I hope I don't hurt the chicken. So if you're not familiar, a safety eye, it's called a safety eye because it has a back piece that snaps and secures all the way onto it, and you really can't get it off. So you use them for stuffed animals, things that you might give a child where you don't want the eye or a button to fall off and get swallowed. So these are safety eyes that are meant to really stay on. You might have stories about safety eyes that have not stayed on in your experience. I've never used them, so I don't really know, but I cannot pull these off by hand. They are very secure. So I've got these little pliers that seem to be cutting through the back piece. So maybe I can carefully just snip, 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 making sure not to snip my work until I get all the way off. Okay, this is promising. I don't know if you can see, but I've started to break through this side. So I think if I can get all the way to the center, I'll be able to get the safety eye off. I think I did it. So again, this is not something that that your child is going to be able to do, especially from the inside of the stuffed animal. They would have to take it all apart, flip it inside out, and get their pliers to get these off. So I do think it's a pretty good option if you're making stuffed animals and things that need little eyes or details, and you're going to gift it to a child in your life. And they always say, when I read patterns, that for safety eyes, you're supposed to place them where you think you want them. You place the front of the eye, push it through the work, and then you meditate on it. You think about it until you know for sure if that's the place you want the safety eye to be, and at that point, you put the back on, which is absolutely what I should have done. So I got that one off. Let me just slip it out of the front. Great. So that eye is pretty big, and I think just a little too big for this size stuffed animal. If I wanted it to have a whimsically large eye, it would have been a good size. But this is good to know. So I'm just using a little pair of pliers that cut. I guess they're kind of like, these might technically be wire cutters, something like that. So if you know more about tools, you'll already know what this is. And I'm just snipping in from one side, carefully pulling back my knitting on the back so that I'm not slicing through the work. And I'm trying to cut until I get halfway through the disc. Okay. Whew. Excuse me. So we are off to a good start. What I failed to mention when we started this segment is that I really hate seaming. I really hate some of the finishing work that goes into projects. So I'm sitting down on camera to be accountable to seam this this chicken and finish the work. So now my chicken has no eyes. I can reuse these 2 safety eyes. I'll just have to have different backing pieces. And I have a big set of plain black safety eyes that I keep. And so I have lots of backing pieces. So this part I can save. This part I'll have to toss. So now I get to attach the safety eyes that I'd really like to have on the chicken, and I'll place the eyes first, double check that I like the position, and then I will secure them, and hopefully these will be the eyes that the chicken has forever. So there's no specific placement needed. I'm just looking for what looks natural. I think closer to the beak looks good. And then I'll just find a little gap in the knitting and press the eye in. Let's see. That's cute. I think maybe it could be a little closer to the beak. I can't tell. I don't know where a chicken's eye is really supposed to go. Let me try the one on the reverse side, and if I like that placement better, I will shift the first one. Okay, let's see. I think that's similar to the back. It's, I don't know, like a ½ inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch from the beak. I think those look very similar in their placement. I want this one to come forward just to see what it would look like. Okay, I like that. I know it's pretty close to the comb, but I think that's good placement. He looks funny from the front. Oh, I'm gonna put the backs on, and that's that. So now I flip inside out, and you can see the ridges on the back of the eye. And then there are little plastic pieces that need to get pushed onto the front. And then as we push, it'll kind of click over the ridges. Okay. Sorry for my noises as I do this. As soon as I put them on, now I feel like I put them on way too high. Okay, that's that. I have to leave it because I put them on and I don't want to snip them off again. I also don't have any more safety eyes of this kind with me. So that's what he looks like. And I think at the end of the day, it's okay if it's not the exact placement I need or that looks right, because it's a chicken. And there's not too much right and wrong about a knit or crocheted chicken. So now for the seaming. I attempted to seam this on camera the other day, and I couldn't figure out the best sort of seam. I tried to flip inside out and seam from the inside, from the wrong side, but whatever I was doing, my yarn still showed through. The color of the joining yarn I was using, it was just too visible, and I didn't love the outcome. So I looked at other examples, I tried to figure out what would make the best join, and I couldn't figure out a join that I loved. So I think I'm actually going to join this by crocheting it together. That's what happens at the back of the tail. You just use a contrasting color and you crochet the two together for a little detail. And I like that. So I think I'm going to bring that into more of the chicken, because I really hate seaming with a darning or tapestry needle. I'd much rather go in with my little crochet hook and choose one of these colors that I've used. And I think I'm going to go with the tail color. My other option might be going with the blue, but I'm just imagining once he's stuffed and sitting upright, oh, it's a tricky decision. I wish that in these videos I could have a real-time vote that the people watching could tell me, yes, go with the blue, or go with this sort of gray and blue together. But I can't do that. Okay, maybe I'll start with the blue and we'll see what happens. So for this joining, I'm just going to work through the edge of each side of the chicken. I think I'll start by trying to slip stitch. Okay, I'm not loving the slip stitch. I think it looks a little goofy. It just looks bulky. And if I'm going to have bulk, I would rather have a line of single crochet sitting on top of the work. I'm just going to carry through with this until I reach the stopping point, a couple inches from here, and then I'll take a look at it and I'll see what I think. When I make adaptations like this on a pattern, partially it's to suit the way I like to craft. I mentioned I don't really like to seam, and I couldn't find a way to seam with the tapestry needle that looked really inconspicuous. So I thought if it's going to be visible, if it's going to be noticeable, I might as well try an alternative that I enjoy crafting more. And when I do things like this, I get excited because I feel like, in a way, my version of the project, whether it's a sweater I'm making, or in this case, the chicken, my version of the project will be a little bit different. And when I see it, when I look at it, I'll know mine's different because I chose to work a detail a different way. And yes, that does mean I did it wrong, but I always say there are no rules. There are no black and white rules in crafting. There are, of course, certain ways to get to an end result that work or don't work. I mean, sometimes you might be twisting your stitches, you might be yarning under instead of yarning over, and it makes your work look a bit reversed. But if you're still getting an end result you're happy with, then that's great, that's fine. Nobody needs to police your crafting or police your technique. The only exception, I think, to that is if you are in a class, if you're working with a teacher and you are attempting to better your skills or learn new skills, and there's something you're doing that's maybe holding you back from reaching the ability to work certain techniques or follow certain patterns, then in that case I say sure. Maybe you should go in and adapt the way you've been doing something. But to you, if it's the way you craft and the way you've always crafted, there's nothing wrong about it. I think that if you're not in pain, then you're okay to keep going. If whatever you're doing is causing you a lot of fatigue and a lot of pain, then yes, I think you really should see if you can check in with someone to help find a more ergonomic way to craft. But I just wanted to mention that. So when I do things like this, I take pride in the fact that I'm not following the pattern exactly. I'm technically doing something wrong, but I think the wrong way that I'm doing it is special because it reflects part of my technical abilities and it reflects my enjoyment of the project. Okay, we are at the point where I'm supposed to stop. I'm going to do one more stitch into where these stitch markers are. And then we're supposed to pause, so I'm just going to pull a longer loop through. I think that's kind of cute, having this, what looks like a braid, along the chicken's front. And if I pull it open as if it were to be stuffed, as if it were to be. Sometimes when I talk on camera, it's like a whiplash or time warp that I don't know what I've just said, and I don't know if it makes any sense, especially grammatically. So if you're the grammar police, be gentle with me. I think it's cute. Sorry, I'm not even showing it. I don't love it on this side. I really like it on this side where you see the braid. And from the front, I think it's cute. It makes it look scrappy. So I'm going to carry on joining like this. If I don't like it and I change my mind, the good thing is that because it's crochet, I can just get my tail that I've buried out and I can just pull and all of this will come undone. Versus the seaming I would have done with the tapestry needle would have been a little more embedded into the work and might have been harder to undo. The next thing I'm meant to do is to sew down the wattle to the neck. And they say to sew the straight side of it down. I think this side is the straight side and this side is sort of the ruffly side with increases and decreases. I don't know which direction it's supposed to go. So I might look at a picture of a chicken and see if that helps. Details, details. It's all in the details. I'm always astounded at how long some of the finishing work can take, especially with pieces so small. I feel like it should take a second, but it doesn't. It takes much longer than a second. Okay, I'm trying to get it anchored so that there's still some floppiness, but it's not just sticking out randomly. I have some much smaller tapestry needles that I love to use, but here's the peak of my laziness. They are downstairs in a bag, and I'm upstairs, so I didn't really feel like pausing to go get those needles. So I'm using instead an enormous tapestry needle for this size of yarn. But it is working out just fine. Now I just need to bury this end so that things stay secure. Okay, that's pretty cute. Pretty cute, Mr. Chicken. Ugh. Okay. So now I believe I need to join the bottom panel, this little piece, so that the chicken can stand up. So that's it. So I guess I'll start seaming it together a bit, and then I can start stuffing before I close it up too much. And as I stuff it, I have a plan to weigh the chicken down a bit. So I'll show that once I do a little bit more seaming. All right, before I get too far with this joining, I'm realizing I should definitely tack this bottom piece down so that it lines up decently with the body of the chicken. Okay, I had to go reference a YouTube video from the designer of the pattern to see how far back this bottom piece reaches. They say in the pattern that it starts at the bottom here of the front portion, but then I couldn't tell if my piece was meant to go here, just to stand up under the chicken, or if it was supposed to go all the way back to this bottom piece of the tail, and that's where it's supposed to go. So I'm going to give mine a little stretch, and now I'm going to line up half of it to go all the way back to that part of the tail. So if that makes sense, we're going all the way from the front of the chicken to the back of the tail. So I'll start pinning at my destination, and then I will give it a little stretch, and I'll try to find a halfway point. And then I think for peace of mind, I'm going to put 2 more markers in just to keep things lined up as I work. Okay, once I finish this side, I'll do the same pinning on the other side. And here we are at the first marker. I think this goes by much faster for me than using a darning needle and trying to do some sort of mattress seam. And again, that's the pleasure of crafting, of being in charge of our own projects. You can really do it the way you enjoy and decide how you want the outcome to be. Okay, again I go. I found things to be rippling a little too much. I think I'd put my single crochets too close together, but I'm aiming to keep them close so that stuffing doesn't come out. But all in all, I put too many in, and so my fabric was rippling, buckling a bit. So I pulled back, and I'm just spacing them out. I'm trying to space them more naturally with every 2 knit rows. And hopefully there won't be any stuffing issue. There, now there's less rippling, and hopefully there won't be gaps for stuffing to come through. We will see. We'll find out. All right, we're nearly there. So much of the chicken is done. He's got his details. Sorry. She has got her details, her eyes. The bottom panel is attached. It's like a gusset so that the chicken will be able to stand up. And the only thing remaining is to stuff and then seam up the tail. I'm not sure if the pattern recommends leaving the tail for last or leaving 1/2 of the bottom for last, but I think this will make sense for me. So I wanted the chicken to be weighed down, or I want the chicken to be weighed down, so I have some like weighted blanket pellets. It's like stuffing, but it's heavy. And so I'm gonna make my own sort of bean bag that I can put at the bottom, and then I have polyfill stuffing for the rest of the chicken. So let's get stuffing. The heavy stuffing I have is like little pellets, and so I need to put them in something. I've got some organza bags, so I'm thinking I'll put the stuffing or the pellets into the organza bag and then double it up inside another bag, and then that will be like my homemade bean bag sitting inside the chicken. It wasn't until I sat down to do this that I thought I should have just used a bean bag. I could have bought a bean bag instead of buying these pellets, but no. So if you're making this at home, I'd recommend using a bean bag. The instructions just say to use polyfill, which makes sense, but I want my chicken to stand up and not be so light that he tips over, with the slightest tap. That's fun. So there he is with the bag inside, and hopefully you can see, maybe you can hear it as well, the weight of that bag. And then the rest of the chicken will be filled with polyfill to fill in the gaps. So just to make sure these pellets don't come out, I've put them through, or put them in, an organza bag. And I've got another, so I'm going to double bag it, just so with use the bag doesn't burst and we don't have little pellets coming out. Again, this is why a bean bag would have been a smarter choice, because it's got the bigger beans in it, and the bag is probably really durable. So I know for next time. So now I've got my sachet doubled up and tied off. So I'm going to start by putting that in the bottom of the chicken. And I want to make sure it's laying as flat as possible, so that when the chicken stands up, he's also sitting as flat as possible. My next supply is polyfill stuffing. This is an old bag I have of polyfill from, I don't even know, maybe one of my knitted animal friends. And I'm going to grab a generous amount. I really want to stuff the chicken, sort of overstuff the chicken so that he stands up nicely. I don't want him to look limp and feeble. So I'm just tearing off bits as I go so that I can manipulate it into a smoother shape. And I am sending some down around the sides of that sachet. And I'm making sure to send it up into the head. And even into the beak. Oh, I think he's very cute already. How cute. He's a fat little chicken. Fat and little. I think his eyes are a little too high up. Kind of looks like he's looking up to the sky. That's okay. And now I need to do the tail. So I think I'll start seaming up the tail, and then I'll manipulate the rest of the stuffing, and I'll see if I need to add any last bits. All right, just going in and tacking down each point to make this a little easier to do. It's really unbelievable to me how much time this takes. I know I said that earlier. I've been sitting and filming for over an hour now, and all of the pieces were done. The beak was already seamed, so I really just needed to seam it up and stuff it. But it feels like there's a learning curve to this, and parts of this I've taken apart to go back and try to do in a more tidy way. But it's time consuming. I forget that really every aspect of crafting can be very time consuming, especially if you're doing a new skill, doing an element for the first time. So if you're making this, or whatever you're making, it seems like it's taking a really long time, you are not alone. I also feel like this is taking so much time. But we're close to the finish line. We're nearly there. Okay, I think this is my last chance to stuff the bird. So I'm going to run a little bit of extra stuffing down into the bottom point and to the middle point, just so that all of that work is really clearly defined. Okay, I think that's going to be the right amount, and I just need to seam around it, and then I can squeeze it into place. Amazing. With that, we are done. The last thing I have to do is adjust the stuffing, and then I have just two tails to weave in. And they're already tied off, so all I have to do is run them through the center part of the bird and then snip them. His hair keeps falling over. Adorable. Let me weave this in, and then we will have a final look at the bird. There we have it. Our sweet little chicken is finished. That's it. I think he's adorable. Again, this is made out of fingering weight yarn, so it's a good deal smaller than the worsted weight chicken that the pattern is designed for. I don't know. Fairly tedious. I don't like the finishing work. I don't like seaming things up. It's lots of little pieces, so it can feel a bit fiddly. So I'm not positive that I will come back and make a worsted weight chicken. I'd like one because I think he would be very cute sitting behind me. I mean, this one could sit behind me, but I was planning on sending this to work with my husband. I think it looks appropriate for sort of Notre Dame themed chicken, and that's where my husband and I both attended school. So I thought he could take him to work and have him at his office for some emotional support, and then maybe I'll make myself a worsted weight version to sit here to support me as I'm crafting away the days here at home. Let's see, the last thing I need to do is give her a name. And I know I say her, but she might end up with a boy name, so we'll see. My thoughts are things with hen. My first thought was Henry Kissinger, but then I thought, what about Henry Potter and the... Oh, I had a good idea earlier. Henry Potter and the Chicken of Secrets. Sorry, that's embarrassing. Fun project, really popular project. This was #1 on Ravelry in the last couple of weeks, and so people are making them all over the place. Again, I think I mentioned this at one point, if it made it into the final edit, the crochet version of the chicken is not quite as straightforward. I have a friend doing that pattern, and it is filled with issues and errors. So if you're interested in making the chicken and you're not a knitter, if you decide to go with the crochet version, make sure you check Ravelry for the project pages for the people who've made the crocheted chicken. They all have corrections listed. They've taken the time to share what you should be doing. Not all of those are exactly right, so it's almost a guessing game of what to do to get the right result. So that's unfortunate. Maybe the designers will come out with an updated version of the crochet pattern. Fingers crossed, I think they should, but the knitting pattern is pretty well tested. It's pretty straightforward, and I think is a fun project to do. So if you're thinking about it, this is my experience with the emotional support chicken, slightly modified for sock weight yarn, and that's it. That's all from Henry, and that's all from me. Jumping in here to talk a little bit more about the issues that I've mentioned with the crochet version of the pattern. One of my good friends made the version that I showed on screen, and she had to adapt things as she went along so that the chicken would look like a chicken at the end. And so here are some examples on the Ravelry page of people who follow the pattern exactly or followed it to their understanding, and the results really vary. They don't quite look like the knit version, which is the one obviously that has been tested along the way. So this is a really helpful project page from Lookahook, Ravelry user Lookahook, who took such careful time and energy in notating the adaptations and corrections they made to the pattern. So if you are set on crocheting this chicken from the pattern, I would recommend going to this project page, and here are the notes. I love this chicken, but I do wish the pattern had been tested. If it was being offered for free, I could see just putting it out there and letting people have at it, but for the price, I feel the errors and confusion should be addressed. Hence my low rating for clarity and knocking off 1 star overall. Absolutely. I think if I had taken the time to purchase this crochet pattern and I tried to crochet it and wound up with all sorts of confusion and errors, I would give it an even lower rating because it's something you paid for. You expect it to be tested. So here's quite the long list of notes from Lookahook on what to do to fix the pattern, whether that's a missing instruction or an incorrect instruction. They've rewritten the short rows for the complete head of the chicken, which is great. I mean, this is a great example of a crafter being so diligent and sharing what they've learned from a project with others who might come after them. And not everyone does this. Not everyone has the time. Not everyone cares to go in and make these corrections because, again, it's a paid pattern that should have already gone through the testing process before it is put up for purchase. So again, this is Lookahook on Ravelry, who has gathered such careful notes about how to follow the pattern and how to correct the pattern as you go. So again, I would love if the publisher, the designer of this pattern, came through with a call for testers and corrected the crochet pattern so that it was a more effective crafting experience for crocheters out there. Just scrolling through here, a few more project examples, and you can see how they vary. I think if you scroll through the knit examples, they're pretty cohesive. There might be some that look a little bit different because of people's different tension and yarn choices, but they're going to look chicken-like. So, I mean, yeah, again, this is not a critique of anyone's crafting and crochet abilities. This is a critique of the instructions themselves, and this is the result they lead to with some sort of funny proportions. Less than chicken-like, I'd say. So again, caution for crocheters, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate this pattern isn't equally accessible for knit and crochet at this time. So just wanted to plug all of that in here. Just a final word here on the difference between knitting and crochet, and sometimes the patterns that are created equally for both and the patterns that don't work. And in this scenario, I think it's really interesting that the crochet pattern is weaker than the knitting pattern, at least for now, with the errors, with the sort of misdirection, the misshapenness of the chicken, because with crochet, of course, we have amigurumi. We have crocheted creatures and animals and stuffies, loveys, whatever you want to call them. And with crochet, it's so easy to change direction and grow your work, decrease your work, kind of work freehand. So I just find it really interesting that in this scenario, the crochet pattern doesn't quite work out the way we would expect it to, especially for a paid pattern. So I'm sure a lot of crocheters out there could look at the chicken and know exactly what to do to make it from scratch without a pattern. So again, if you're interested in joining this craze of emotional support chickens, whether that's knit or crocheted, the knitting pattern, yes, gets a check. It's been tested. I mean, in my experience, I just made it, so I count that as a test, and it passes. But unfortunately, right now, the crochet pattern is not in the same state. So it would of course be great if all patterns came with a crochet version and a knit version, but some things don't work out quite as well. But in this case, for a crocheted creature or a knit creature, an animal, a stuffed animal, it should be very straightforward to have the pattern exist in both realms. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for spending time with me on the channel. I hope there was something in this video that made you smile, that you learned, that you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments. Let me know what you like, let me know what you want to see in the future, and as always, I'm really happy to be spending this time with you. Happy crafting, happy crocheting, happy knitting to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.